بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. There's been quite a few things going on in the last several weeks, and I've been kind of consumed by my private life, mainly just being a single dad, just trying to spend some time with my daughter. And so we've run around and gone to Disneyland, and we've done Legoland, and so many of the things that have been floating around happening in the ambience, right? I haven't really taken any time to speak on or address those things, whether that be obviously a couple of horrific acts of public violence, or the long-awaited discussion, or loathingly awaited discussion between Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and Jordan Peterson. And many of these things are revealing in a certain kind of way of what's going on with us. So let's take some of these public acts of violence. Obviously, they're horrific. They're despicable. They're unconscionable. They're unimaginable. But I feel like the right conversation isn't taking place for us to be able to, if there is even a snowball's chance in a microwave of moving the needle forward in any way, that I feel by and large the right kinds of conversations aren't happening. And my concern with that is the ever-increasing tendency for Muslims to be caught up in these kind of prefabricated narratives and prefabricated frameworks of how to discuss things that in many ways preempt our own deen, our own theology, our own aqidah, our own creed, our own fiqh, right, our own jurisprudence. It kind of preempts these. And so you will, taking the recent massacre in Texas, right, you will have one political camp that will call for gun reform, because obviously the reason why a young man will shoot his grandmother and then go into a school full of children and murder them is because of the gun laws. Now, before anybody goes off half-cocked, I am not saying that we should not have a conversation about that, right? While I am, I guess to lazily use a word, I am certainly pro-Second Amendment, but for me, that is not a rukn of my deen, right? That is not something that I believe in. It is something that I would like to be able to avail myself of, either for recreational purposes, to, go and do some target shooting. And of course, most importantly, yes, I would most certainly like to be able to own a firearm for the defense of myself and my family in the house. And I can certainly see how some people want to, as a reaction, say, we need more reform. I do believe with that general statement, but I'm not convinced that the reform of said gun laws will necessarily do anything from a pragmatic point of view. If we could speak, or rather not speak, if we had the ability to act with impunity, right? If we were granted some type of omnipotence to act where we could confiscate every single firearm on the planet in which nobody had any guns, I don't know, maybe that wouldn't be so bad, including the criminals, right? I'm talking about from an omnipotent point of view. If we could confiscate, right, every single firearm in existence and go back to, sticks and knives and baseball bats and rocks, sure, that would probably even the playing field, and that might not be so bad. Obviously, that is not a reality, and so in the end, it will most certainly be the average person that would suffer. Now, we can have a conversation about, should certain types of firearms be publicly available for people. And I think a lot of this has to do with the media narrative, right? I mean, you could take away any kind of rifle. I'm not going to use the word assault rifle because, to be honest, that's a contrived term. It's a political term, right? You could take away an AR-15, you can take away an AK-47, and you can find what that guy did in Texas, you could do with a handgun, right? You can shoot your grandma with a handgun. You can go into a school and you can shoot a bunch of children and a bunch of teachers with a handgun, right? And so, to me, that's not getting to the core of the problem. Now, again, you want to go on CNN and discuss it, they're going to say, oh, the problem, they're going to address such issues as mental health, and they're going to talk about laws and legislation. And then if you go on Fox News, they're going to just kind of do a sort of like a rope-a-dope, right? Because that's for political gains. Nobody wants to talk about the heart. Nobody wants to talk about the collapse of manhood. Why, whether it's the shooter in Texas, whether it's this guy in, where was he? Somewhere on the East Coast that went to the grocery store, whether it was not that long ago, I think there was another white kid in Michigan that went to a school, right? We are seeing a collapse in the health of the heart and the character of young men in particular. And nobody seems to want to be able to, or perhaps even has the capacity to discuss this problem in its fullness. Because there has to be something deeply sick, as the Quran says, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرْض, or الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرْض, or there has to be a sickness in somebody's heart that they would want to shoot their grandmother. There has to be a sickness in their heart that a person would want to go and murder children. And to bring it back, why I'm concerned about our community being roped into these McMansion prefabricated arguments is that, yes, I do believe the only solution to fix these problems is to fix the hearts. And I don't see any other ideology, I don't see any other religious tradition, I don't see any other philosophy that has the capacity to reform the heart except for the Deen of Islam. Now, that doesn't mean that Islam is so perfect that there are imperfect Muslims. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that we need to be able to, if we're going to participate in these kinds of public conversations, which I think we should definitely be, participatory in them, we need to do so from a point of view in which we are truthfully speaking for ourselves, and also not off the cuff, but we are speaking truthfully of what our deen informs us to speak upon. And so we should not be falling into the trap of the solution is legislation, or the solution is only people kill people, guns don't kill people. That's a typical counter argument, right? To be fair, right? We can criticize the left on, well, we can just legislate ourselves to paradise. It doesn't exist. But then also on the right, the political right, they also have their idiotic statements as well, like people kill people, guns don't kill people. That is a limited truth. The more complete truth of that is that while it's true people kill people, guns clearly play an amplifying role in the ability to amplify that killing process, right? If I wanted to go into a school, if I wanted to kill my grandmother, yes, I could beat her to death with my own bare hands. If I wanted to go into a school and kill children, it's true, I could also beat them to death with my own bare hands. But the capacity to do so on a large scale in which there is not the ability to react or restrain is clearly not the same. So the firearm undoubtedly plays an amplifying factor in that. And so my criticism equally of the right is that is an incomplete answer, and that is just simply playing political hot potato. And it's also what I would like to call is both a political and a theological cowardice to not address an issue. Also, to be fair, right, that while I don't agree that we can legislate ourselves to something more perfect, and it's true, we have plenty of laws that are out there, at the same time, owning a firearm, even if it is a right, because people get into this conversation about rights versus privilege, even if we do consider it to be a right, rights can still be revoked. Rights are not irrevocable, right? Clearly, like, we have laws that if a person commits a felony, the right for them to do certain things is revoked. When they're in jail, they cannot vote, or, all other kinds of things, right? So even if we have a discussion that owning a firearm is a right, rights are not irrevocable. If a person, even though it's not a right to necessarily have a driver's license, but just in a similar vein, if a person gets drunk, goes driving, and murders somebody with their car, they can have their driver's license taken away, right? Doesn't mean that they won't be able to leave the house, right? They will have to take Uber or take a bus or take a train, right? Meaning that what? Their ability, we will impede their ability to do so, and also send a broader message to society, which is that what? There are consequences for action. So, again, I think we need to be a little bit more high level, a little bit more intelligent about how we want to participate in the discussion of these things. And so I wanted to say that about the following thing. Yes, obviously I like many of you, I am left speechless. Also connected to that, because again, we ought to, right? We are the community that processes reality through revelation. We do not process revelation through reality. What I mean by that is there are statements of the Prophet ﷺ that talks about what? في إشراط الساعة أو في علامة الساعة, right? Though there are signs of the establishing of the hour, تأتي الساعة ولا ريب فيها, right? That we know that the hour is coming, and in that we will see al-harj, al-qatl, right? We will see senseless, wanton killing. We will see an abundance of killing and murder, of which what? The one who kills won't really know why he's killed, and the one killed won't know why he was killed. And that we will see when he was asked, alayhi salatu salam, about al-harj, he explained it as what? Al-qatl, right? That would be abundant killing. And what we have to understand, that in the establishment and in the coming of the hour, which there is no ta'akhur, right? There is no delaying it. Along with that will come certain kinds of things. And so while not only can we not legislate away hate, and we cannot legislate away or legislate love, and we cannot legislate away hate, we can also not legislate away the coming of the hour. And that is something important to understand in our processing of what is going on. Yes, we definitely want to work to command to the good and forbid the evil, but those are done within the confines of ma yasha Allah. They're done within the confines of what Allah desires and what Allah decrees. Two, in the conversation about, you see people making these very vulgar and crass memes about, excuse my language, right? Prayers and condolences. Well, I don't think I will ever be able to co-sign that. So even in the face of whatever calamity there is, I don't think that we can co-sign, prayers and condolences, right? That would be unconscionable also from us as a religious community. So again, being very leery and careful of how and to what depth we want to participate in certain kinds of these conversations, and that we should understand that. Or look at it from the broad, in light of that, before I lose my train of thought. Like, why are people having that reaction? F this, F that, right? They are doing so because they're very frustrated with their political leadership. Oh, we need to get rid of the senators. But we say this every single time. Every time there's a tragedy like this, right, there's a momentary groundswell of sympathy and anger, which is certainly understandable. And then yet we all going back to binge watch the next thing on Netflix, or the next, we scroll or swipe up for the next video on TikTok. And so what I want to draw attention to is it's very quick and convenient to get mad at Nancy Pelosi, or it's very quick and convenient to get mad at Mitch McConnell. And certainly, those are two people that deserve a lot of ire. And but why are they able to stay where they are at? Yeah, you can say it's because of the lobbying and because of this or that. Well, okay, that I'm sure that plays a role in it. The 800-pound gorilla in the room, because I think elephants weigh a little bit more than 800 pounds, but let's say, right, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is us. We tend to not have discipline. We tend to not stay on track, and that is what allows them to stay where they are at. And so instead of making memes and giving the middle finger to prayers and condolences, or making memes and, giving the middle finger to Mitch McConnell or, Nancy Pelosi or whatever that it is, or to the NRA or to Planned Parenthood or, whoever our, political, whoever we have a political axe to grind with, right? Again, we understand reality by revelation. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That Allah will not change the condition of a people, biqawm, until they change their condition. And so what we see from tragedy to tragedy to tragedy to tragedy is not simply, there's no change in the politicians, there's no change, right? There's no change in the people. And so we go back to what fi qulubihim marad. Not only is the kind of person that can go into a school have a sick heart, right? A person that goes into a school and, murder a bunch of school children, not only does that person have a sick heart, but those of us that can sit back and accept this, right? And kind of essentially normalize it and go back to status quo. And then when it happens again, momentarily get outraged, right? And so when I see Muslims posting these memes, right? I mean, there's a big problem of constantly us expressing our emotions, whether those be emotions of elation, emotions of sadness, emotion of anger. We're always doing it through somebody else's prefabricated narrative. That's one of my big problems of the memification of Muslim imagination, of Muslim theology. And so, even something as trite, you may call it nitpicking. But I remember this past Eid, Muslims were sending around some stupid picture that it was like a picture of Obama and a cow and I don't know, something like, Eid Mubarak. I mean, it was like, can you not express Eid Mubarak? I understand having humor, but can you express your own humor or your own happiness or your own sadness or your own grief? Can you do that yourself? Can you not retweet something from AOC, which we know it's just part of her staying in power, part of her stirring up the emotions of people. I don't believe any of these people genuinely care about anything. And again, they are not willing to have those tough conversations of why are our hearts so sick? Not only the hearts of those that commit violent crimes, but why are the hearts of those who are witnessing the crimes being committed, why are they so sick? Why are they so lazy? And so, just to kind of wrap up a bow on that, right, is that we need to really think twice about how we jump into certain political phrase, and then unfortunately doing a kind of al-wara wal-bara on that, like holding each other, accountable based upon certain political affiliations, right? So, you can have people, again, that will say, if you're going to vote for Ted Cruz, I'm going to question your Islam. But you don't wear hijab, you drink, you have a girlfriend, you have a boyfriend, you're a homosexual, you don't pray, you don't make any attempt to go to the masjid, right? I can't question your Islam for doing that, but I'm going to question your Islam based upon, right, who you vote for. That's my concern, again, about the depths of which we are uncalculatingly leaping into these various public political conversations. All right, let's flip a page and the issue with the conversation between Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and Jordan Peterson. I've finished about half of the interview, and I found it, entertaining. I'm going to speak here for a moment about what I do find to be a disturbing trend also going on in our community. Now, if you want to critique the substance of what Jordan Peterson says, if you want to discuss or critique the substance of what Sheikh Hamza says, that's not a problem, right? That in itself is not a problem. But I see a tendency amongst black and brown Muslims that they have become themselves so completely circumscribed by the presence of whiteness that has developed within them a kind of fear and loathing in Las Vegas, right? A sort of fear and loathing of whiteness, right? That if two white people get together and discuss something, that in and of itself is loathsome and disgusting. At the same time, it seems to just completely control them, right? That if I don't know, let's say there were two black Muslims that wanted to get together and they wanted to discuss, I don't know, anything from, say, abortion to gun control to liberalism to feminism. I don't think there would be that kind of reaction. It was something very similar to what Dr. Jackson had said years ago about, this phenomena of the political cartoons in which certain European artists drew pictures of the Prophet ﷺ in a very, despicable and mocking manner, and why, some Muslims were reacting to it with such, violence and vitriol in the way they were. I mean, number one, obviously that's not a picture of the Prophet ﷺ. We only have descriptions of him. We do not have a picture of him. We don't know exactly what he looks like. Two, it was clear that if the artist had been, as he said, if the artist had been from Guatemala, nobody would have cared. Right? If it had been a Mexican or Guatemalan or an Eskimo, right, that had drawn those pictures, everybody would be like, man, what do these Guatemalans and Mexicans and Eskimos, what do they know about it? But because certain groups of Muslims were the former victims, or their parents or their grandparents were the former victims of these colonial or representative of the colonial master, right? They reacted to this in such a way that you could tell it really had nothing to do about the Prophet ﷺ. It had nothing to do with the ghira, standing up for him, and it just had everything to do with them. And so I see the same attitude that, oh my God, Jordan Peterson and Hamza Yusuf. I remember saying people were going online when it was just a rumor that it was going to happen. May Allah not give him guidance. May Allah not give guidance to Jordan Peterson. Like, oh my God. And then now that it came out, like, oh, this is just white supremacy. This is white privilege. How is this white privilege? So you mean to tell me that white people, just by proxy of being white, have privilege for everything? And if so, right, even if they didn't acquire that privilege by their own hand, that is somehow despicable and blameworthy. And that, again, this is clear that the Muslims who are reacting to it in this way are not reading the Quran, because Allah clearly gives some people privilege and some people not, right? And it's not a privilege that they earned by anything whatsoever. Allah, Allahu yarzuqu man yasha wa yaqdir, right? That Allah will give the rizq of whomever He wants to whoever He wants, and some will be more than others, right? That is essentially a kind of privilege. And so I found, again, if you disagreed with what Jordan Peterson was saying, or you disagreed with what Hamza Yusuf was saying, okay, that's perfectly fine. But what I'm finding is it doesn't really matter what Jordan Peterson says, and it doesn't really matter what Sheikh Hamza says, that people are going to find fault with it because of their whiteness. And I say this as somebody that, personally, I don't find Jordan Peterson all that interesting. I've never, and I don't really, I think understand the reason of some of his mass appeal. I never found him incredibly engaging myself. And I'm not a Zaytunite. I'm not a follower of Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. I'm also not an enemy or a opponent of Sheikh Hamza. I have, from time to time, been critical of some things that he has said in the past. But that's not my occupation, and nor is it my preoccupation. And overall, I think Sheikh Hamza, though I might disagree with his school of Aqidah, I might disagree with some other things, right? The man built a college. And so for a lot of the detractors that I find of him, these are also people that ain't done nothing. They ain't done nothing. The man built a college. The man, may Allah bless him and preserve him and reward him for the good that he has done, has probably single-handedly been one of the most effective da'iyat in the Western world, right? By and large, right? And so I feel that people take their criticisms, again, to extremes. What? Not because people aren't capable of being criticized. I mean, obviously, Sheikh Hamza is not ma'asum, and he has never said that he is ma'asum. He's never said that he's infallible. But I think, again, why are people going to the lengths of it is because of his whiteness. And I find this a really despicable trend in the brown and black Muslim community where, once upon a time, if you go back to the time of Malcolm, rahimahullah, it's funny, Muslims love to talk about Malcolm, right? May Allah have mercy on him. Muslims love to talk about Malcolm, and yet, what was one of the things that caused Malcolm to leave the kufr and the shirk, that caused him to leave the filth and the idolatry of the Nation of Islam and become a real Muslim? Is what? When he went to Hajj and he said, I saw white Muslims, black Muslims, brown Muslims. I saw this real brotherhood, right? And it allowed him to put his very valid truck with white supremacy in its appropriate place, where he could be very critical of white supremacy, and from a theological point of view, while at the same time embracing his fellow white brothers and sisters. I don't see that anymore. Now, whiteness is held to be something permanently in suspicion. This is something very, very despicable. And it really shows that Muslims don't understand who Malcolm is, and they just use him in a very political kind of way as a sort of hockey puck or as a crowbar to wedge into their arguments, but they really don't have any understanding of Malcolm, and I don't think they really have any love for him either. Or if it is, it's not really love, it's more of an infatuation. And so I will say this to conclude. While I do not find Jordan Peterson to be anything super special, and I have many of my own issues theologically and psychologically with some of his claims on what he purports, right? I will say this. For whatever reason, Allah has chosen this person. And when I say choose, don't get it twisted. The dude's a kafir. But for whatever reason, Allah has chosen this person to put forward a public conversation about some very important topics. Now, we may disagree the way that he discusses them or the contents of those conversations, but nobody else seems to have the ability at this moment to push those conversations forward in the public sphere and to discuss them. And so, putting aside my personal issues with some of the content of what he says, I do appreciate the fact that the conversation is being had. And so perhaps Muslims should, again, stop thinking so emotionally, exclusively. I mean, we shouldn't do away with our emotions whatsoever, but we should stop being so consumed by emotional thinking and start to also think in a broader way that, you know what? Forget about Jordan Peterson, the man. Jordan Peterson has ignited a fire that is a certain kind of public conversation about manhood, gender, sexuality that nobody else has been able to start. And that, to be frank, we should be perhaps a little bit more opportunistic of jumping on that and participate in it so that we can also make our at least take on it heard. And so if we become so focused on the opposition of whiteness, we're going to really miss the forest for the trees. So let me see if I can read a few of these comments here. I don't like this new phone. It's like it puts it into some kind of mode that even though the brightness is all the way up, you can hardly see anything. So, exactly. So anyway, I just thought I would leave this here as a few comments. Jazakumullahu khairan. Hope you will take them in consideration. See you in the next one. Assalamu alaikum.